koto, and good evening from New Zealand. My name is Simon McManus, and I'm from ITS New Zealand, that's Intelligent Transport Systems New Zealand. We're the peak body for ITS in New Zealand. You might be familiar with other organisations such as ITS Australia or ITS UK. So we're the peak body for ITS in New Zealand, and we have members from the industry and from government. And you can find more information about us on itsnz.org. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to the webinar this evening. The webinar is Flexible CITS Implementation Meeting Local Needs with Global Expertise. And we're joined this evening by Mike Steere, CITS Project Manager, Mark Walker, Technical Director from Resolve Group, Simon Kowalske, Project Manager from CAVI, that's the Cooperative and Automated Vehicle Initiative from Queensland, Australia, and Nicolas, my apologies, Nicolas Mercier is the Senior Deployment Manager from Monotch in the Netherlands. Today we'll be exploring a New Zealand case study on roadwork safety to demonstrate how global collaboration using proven systems from Europe can be used to accelerate CITS in other jurisdictions. Just before we hand over to the speakers for this evening, I'll just point out a few administrative details. If you would like to ask a question, we'll be approaching the questions at the end of the webinar. So by all means, use the Q&A function available in Teams. If you could please put your name and organisation at the front of your question to give us some context, that would be really useful. You may also wish to identify who you would like to answer your question. Once the webinar is completed, we'll be sending out a recording to you in the next day or two after some minor editing. Okay, so we'll get this webinar underway now. Once again, it's Flexible CITS Implementation Meeting Local Needs with Global Expertise. And our first speaker is Mike Steere, who's CITS Project Manager, and he led the case study which we'll be looking at this evening.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thanks, Chair Simon, for the introduction. A pleasure to have this opportunity to share what we've been working on with our project here in New Zealand this year and into last year. And I really look forward to hearing actually from the other presenters today as well, because they have all been partners working together on our project. So what I'm going to talk you through today is really a look from, I guess, a project leadership perspective about what are the things we need to think about, or what are the lessons we've taken away from managing our project. So that's looking at things like planning, the funding sources, and also how we've managed to maximize impact from that as well. So the theme being obviously CITS from scratch or from zero. So I'm going to talk you quickly through an overview of the project so you can understand a bit about what the project was about. And then I'll look at some of those key lessons emerging from our work. So firstly, around the focus of the project. Secondly, about working with partners. Thirdly, the funding, as I mentioned. And then fourthly, a little bit on direction. So our project began through an innovation program call from the New Zealand Transport Agency. So they were running a large-scale program to encourage innovation in various spaces where New Zealand's experiencing challenges in the transport system. One of these was around the theme of making roadworks safer. So we have had challenges here, as in many countries, with injuries and deaths to road workers, and obviously serious accidents in and around roadwork sites. So the objective of this that we applied to was to look at how can we utilize technology to try and make these areas smarter and make it safer for everyone in that space. What we did is brought together an alliance of different organizations, both private and public, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail in a moment. And after I've finished my presentation, you'll hear more of the technical aspects from Mike Walker to follow me. But from a objective standpoint of our project, we were looking at doing two really quite simple things, but quite key in terms of setting up an ITS ecosystem in New Zealand and actually making this happen. So firstly was to successfully send and receive a CITS message from a roadwork site for the first time in New Zealand. And then secondly, it was to assess the potential for CITS to improve safety around roadwork sites. So talking to those stakeholders, talking to the people on the ground, and understanding those processes to see where CITS might fit in future. So our setup during the project, which we came to, involved a number of different partners from the Netherlands, from France, from Australia, from New Zealand, and multiple local partners from here in New Zealand. And I won't speak to this again in detail, but Mark will take you through this in more detail shortly. But essentially what we were doing, as you can see here, is sending that denim message from the roadworks vehicle, looking to send that through and receive it from approaching vehicles. We look to do this in 3 different scenarios with slightly different nuances around different types of roadwork sites and different road conditions as well. So the results of our project, we deployed in 3 different cities at these different roadwork sites, and we were able to successfully send and receive the message in all of those occasions. We identified some shortcomings in some different types of scenarios through that project as well. Secondly, we managed to, in addition to receiving the messages, we managed to deliver that analysis and some industry research about the understanding, the opinions about CITS from the civil construction and from the traffic management industries back to the New Zealand Transport Agency. So overall, a really successful project for us to set up everything technically, deliver that on site in different locations, different scenarios, make the technology work, and then obviously understand the implications of that for organizations. So what can we take away from that, and what is it that we could pass on to other countries, organizations at a relatively early stage in their CITS journey? So firstly, it was focus. The big message, I think, is focus, because CITS is a very broad set of instruments. Its application can go into many different directions, but starting with one use case, I believe, from our experience, has been really, really helpful to diving in and getting quite deep in that. And that is the second point, is to make sure that when you're looking to implement this one use case, that you really get deep into the weeds of that use case. So in our case, it's really understanding what are the challenges for traffic management businesses, what are the logistical issues that might occur as a result of implementing this technology, what are the little nooks and crannies we need to look into to make sure that we're going to be solving the problem and actually delivering benefits to the end users. Because after all, if we're not doing that, then we need to question whether we're doing the right thing in that instance. So that's really important, is understanding those user scenarios, those use cases really, really deeply. The third point is to bring all of those parties into the conversation. They might not be directly involved in the technology itself, but certainly getting them into that conversation early, understanding those perspectives makes for a much richer solution and a much greater likelihood of success. And then finally, with that focus, it really makes the quantifying, the measuring, and the marketing of the success or the impact of the project much simpler if you're looking at that through the lens of one particular focus area. The second piece of information I'd pass on is around the importance of partners. This might appear pretty obvious, but I think it was a real eye-opener for me, just the extent to which we needed international collaboration around this project to make it all happen. New Zealand doesn't have an enormous wealth of CITS knowledge in country, so we really did depend on some of our international partners, some of whom are on the call today, to actually deliver this project successfully, to bring their weight of experience and knowledge. And I think that's a really, really important point, is that a lot of the research, a lot of the experimentation, a lot of the standards, a lot of these things are already there, and you should really lean on them regardless of whether that's inside your country or outside of it. So remember that C in CITS does stand for cooperative, and it's really important both on the front and the back end of these projects. Now, funding. So this actually leans back a little bit into the point around focus, but finding that particular niche or focus area that you're going to look into opens up doors for different funding opportunities. So in our case, we were going through Land Transport Agency in a safety angle, but because CITS has so many different potential benefits, there are a number of different scopes you can look at to get funding across the line. So I encourage you to consider, when you're looking at your project, is which of these is it around the economic efficiency it can deliver? Is it more of an international collaboration angle? But look into these different angles and consider alternative means of funding based on what you're looking to achieve with your setup. Can we do it on a small budget? Yes, we can. That was one thing we really managed to succeed with. We did not have a large budget to work with in our project. So yes, CITS can start small. And I do encourage you to try and get things happening on a small budget, because it makes you ask the right questions. It makes you ask, is this thing absolutely necessary for us to get a functioning CITS ecosystem up and running? And again, just reiterating that earlier point, that having that clear focus in your initiative really helps all of these perspectives. And a big part of that is the fact that funders, when you are looking for those different funding sources, are often wanting to solve one single problem. So you can attach that one issue to that one problem and you can solve it for them. Around the funding as well, something that was quite key, I think, to our success was having a lot of those partner conversations really early, and actually having those partners on board and committed and aligned with what you wanted to achieve before you're sending that application in or going through the process that you need to go through. So getting that commitment, that alignment really early, highly recommended. And I think an overall message in this is, although it might be involving many organizations, it might be involving large organizations, is to really think like a startup. I do bring some software startup experience over the recent years, and I think that mindset was very similar coming into this project as well. We need to be nimble and agile. We need to think, how can we solve this problem on a small budget? And we need to keep really, really focused on the user benefits and on delivering what we need to deliver to make this actually work. And now the final point I want to talk to before I hand over to Mark is around direction. Now, what I mean here is that even though you are going to be focused, you want to get into the depths of that project that you're working on, at the same time, if you're in the early stage context in a country, there isn't a NAP set up, there isn't a large ecosystem of CITS data going around, then I think it's really important to think about the overall direction of the country and how you can play a part in that ecosystem. So for us here in the New Zealand context, that means that what we've been trying to do as we have gone through the course of this project is maximizing the impact, the attention around this project, and the understanding of the benefits it can deliver. We think that's a really important part of building relationships, building up the knowledge around this so that we can take those next steps and deliver a larger scale application of CITS in the future. So just to quickly recap some key lessons: focus narrow, focus with depth on the user side and understand those benefits you need to deliver. Be very cooperative, start small, maximize impact, and think like a startup where you can to help deliver those smaller projects and get them moving. That's all from me. If you would like to reach out and ask any further questions after this, I am more than happy to answer anything. So please reach out to either Simon or the Monotch team. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thanks for your leadership in getting this first CITS project off the ground here in New Zealand. It's great to have a catalyst, and I hope the rest of the industry runs with the opportunity that we've created now. So next we're going to go to Mark Walker, who's the Technical Director from Resolve Group Consultancy here in New Zealand, and he's going to dig into the technical details of this project.
Thanks, Simon. So, just by way of quick introduction, my name is Mark Walker with Resolve Group. I was assisting Mike on the more technical aspects of the project and project management of those, along with working with some of the others you'll hear from today. So, first of all, I would like to just show a picture of what we achieved actually looked like. So the Roadworks vehicle on the right there is an example of one of the vehicles that we installed a CITS unit on, so that vehicle could then broadcast its location using cooperative ITS technology, CITS. That message was then passed through a system, which I'll explain in a bit more detail, with the eventual goal of that Roadworks vehicle's location being displayed on Waze. So just either on the phone app or on the in-vehicle app. without any intervention from a person. So the fact that the person's activated the roadworks site and turned on the broadcasting unit then seamlessly goes all the way through to that vehicle's location being published in Waze. So, and all the moving parts that goes with that. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the general architecture, and then I'll get into some more detail about what the actual pilot looked like. So we made use of C-Roads architecture, which is, C-Roads is a European organisation. They've taken responsibility for trying to harmonise some of the standards and some of the practices around the use of cooperative ITS. So one of the things they've done is develop an architecture based around how information can be shared between the different partners or the different actors in CITS. At the centre of that is the CITS interchange, which can be thought of as the tool that's used to match publishers of data to subscribers of data. And so the data is not actually stored in the CITS interchange, it's just passed through. On the right there, we show the information source. So in this case, it was a roadworks vehicle. That information is being passed through a service provider to the interchange. So that on the other side, a service provider such as Waze can pick up the information and provide it on to the transport users. You can also connect roadside equipment to the CITS interchange. So for instance, a traffic management system that's managing traffic signals could also be publishing and subscribing to data on the interchange. You have governance over the top, so a road authority can actually control who publishes and who subscribes, managing the privacy and security issues. And finally, you have analytics, so you're able to actually look at the data that's being processed and see how it's being used. So moving to a more specific detail of this particular concept, what we set up was the roadworks vehicle on the right that passed information through to a CITS central station, which is the term that's used for a back office system that is taking information from the field, aggregating it, and then passing it on to the interchange. So the CITS interchange is the next step. On the other side of the interchange, you have a Waze processor. So what the Waze processor was doing was subscribing to the interchange, receiving messages that were being provided, and then converting those to a message format that Waze uses. So Waze doesn't directly at this stage use the standard CITS message formats. We needed to do a conversion step in the middle to get it through to Waze. Then once Waze has received it, they can pass it on to users. And underlying all of that, of course, is cellular telecommunications. So the connection between the roadworks vehicle and the central CITS station was a cellular connection. And likewise, when Waze is providing the information through to road users, that's over a cellular connection as well. So as Mike's mentioned, there was quite a few actors in the process. From the right-hand side with the roadworks vehicle contractors and NeoGLS, who provided the CITS unit in the vehicle. Queensland Government, who we'll hear from later today, provided the central CITS station. They'd already developed that station for their own projects, so we were able to partner with them to make use of it. Monotch had the CITS interchange already in place, and they also provided the Waze processor, and I'll talk a little bit more about that next. And then, of course, you've got Waze Google Maps publishing to the end user. 2 Degrees was the cellular provider that we used underneath the network provider, and the project was being funded by New Zealand Transport Agency through their Innovation Fund. So how do we manage to get all of those different partners working together and all joined up? And the key to that was making use of standard interfaces. So as the C-Roads interfaces and data feeds were all based on open standard architecture. So starting from the right again, the roadworks vehicle was sending information through to the CITS central station. That was done using a cellular connection, so just a standard internet connection, and using MQTT protocols to send the data. So MQTT is a very commonly used standard in the telecommunications industry for streaming data. So making use of that standard protocol made it relatively simple to get a roadworks vehicle to connect to the CITS central station. Then the central station could connect to the CITS interchange using the C-Roads standards. Again, they're openly published standards. They've been tested, so Monotch has used those same standards in the CITS interchange on other projects in Europe, so we knew they worked. And similarly, on the waste processor side, we could use the C-Roads protocol to standardize that connection from the waste processor to the interchange. The waste processor was the only new part that we had to build, and that was purely because on the right-hand side of the waste processor, everything's working in the CITS and C-Roads world. On the left-hand side, we had to work with Google and Waze's data standards, so we needed something that translated from CITS standards to Waze's standard data feed. But again, Waze is very public about their data feed and how that works, so there was an open standard we could use to create that interface. And then finally, actually publishing the data so that the vehicle users could see it was all done using Android and iOS apps. So we didn't have to develop an app. We were just making use of Waze and Google Maps, sending data to them the way they wanted it, and then they could publish it. So that meant that we already had an audience of potentially millions who could see the data without us having to develop an app for them. So a few lessons learned on the technical side. First of all, I think we learned that there are components and there are standards that are available to allow you to implement CITS very quickly and very effectively. So as Mike mentioned, we treated this like a startup. We were looking for sort of what is the minimum proposition that we can do to make everything work and demonstrate the concept. And the fact that there are standardized components and standardized interfaces out there made that much easier to do. Those standards are open, so that meant that even though we had several different partners from several different areas, all with their own speciality involved in the project, the fact that there were open standards meant that we could all work together, and there weren't any issues about, I guess, proprietary connections from one system to another. Everyone still has their own intellectual property, so the individual systems themselves and what those systems do might be proprietary, but the way that you connect all those building blocks together is using open standards. And then finally, the architecture we demonstrated was very much scalable. So we were able to take some technology that's been designed to operate at very large scale, and Monotch is operating at a large scale in Europe, and we could use that same architecture to create a proof of concept, knowing that if the proof of concept is successful, it's very easy to scale up to a full-fledged system. And it's also multi-purpose because we're using those C-Roads and CITS architecture standards. Those standards are designed to work for a whole lot of different services, not just roadworks warnings. So by investing in understanding how this particular architecture works and how the different components work, when it comes to implementing other services, so maybe warnings for other things, or even CITS services like vehicle priority, they're all based on that same platform. So it makes it very easier to move on to new services, new use cases. So that's all I wanted to cover off, really just something on the technical side of how it all looked and how it all came together. I'd like to hand back to Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Although that was the technical aspects, I found it easy enough to follow myself, and hopefully everyone else did. We'll get some questions afterwards if people would like to learn more. We're next going to Simon Kowalske, who's a project manager from CAVI, which is the Cooperative and Automated Vehicle Initiative in Queensland, Australia. Simon, welcome.
Great, thanks, Simon. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from where I present today. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and I'd also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. So my name is Simon Kowalske. I'm from the Department of Transport and Main Roads in Queensland, Australia. We're just one of a number of state and territory governments in Australia. Queensland has a fairly diverse road environment. We have a small population of about 5.5 million people, But a land area is bigger than the UK, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and Austria all combined. Next up, I'll show you a little video that might help explain who we are.
Queensland, home to more than 5 million of you, connecting you from A to B by more than 33,000 kilometres of state-controlled road, 6,600 kilometres of rail track, and 124 million public transport trips each year. Our job, no, our passion, is to deliver a network that is accessible to everyone at every age or stage. We're investing more than $6 billion to improve our transport infrastructure, making your roads more flood resilient and bringing new ways to pay, so you can use our network your way. We're making your health and safety our top priority. We're always listening to you, creating more online services than ever, serving customers online over 12 million times each year. We've kept the state moving, transporting more than 1 billion tonnes of freight, adding more than 23 kilometres of new cycling infrastructure, and building and upgrading new boating infrastructure too. We're investing more than $1 billion to maintain and improve our network operations. We're recycling 1.5 million tyres and using them to build our roads. We're switching more than 35,000 streetlights to smart LED technology. We're creating a transport system that's environmentally friendly and socially sustainable, investing in skills, creating jobs, and embracing new technology. Queensland, we're here for you, to connect you to family and friends, work, schools, and hospitals, to create a single transport network accessible to everyone.
So that's who we are. But so I guess the question is, why were we involved in a project like this? So TMR began researching, piloting, and trialling CITS and AB technologies back in 2016, 2017. When we began, there was no commercial off-the-shelf software for road authorities. So we needed to build our own central station and implement message exchange technology. We based our work on ETSI standards and the ETSI reference architecture with a view of creating an interoperable environment. We took a lot of learnings from our early work, and we were able to confirm there were some real safety benefits to this technology. Now that research has been published and is available on the internet if you would like more information. At the conclusion of a major program of work in 2021, we made the decision to continue our journey. We worked on hardening our digital infrastructure. We worked with other states of Australia on a national level, and we also began to seek partnership opportunities to increase our understanding. So while our early work covered a good number of use cases, all based on an EU delivery model, there was still plenty for us to learn. Our initial discovery and subsequent involvement in this project was a result of a good collaboration. Nick Brook, a former director of this project, was invited to present at TTEC, that's New Zealand's ITS conference, where he met our moderator today, Simon. He also met Lee and Ian from the New Zealand Transport Authority, who passed our details on to Mike and Mark. We initially offered to provide SME support, but as our involvement increased, we realised we could provide some real support for this project, and in doing so, meet some of our own program objectives. So what did TMR actually provide? So we provided SME advice and some delivery experience. We provided access to TMR's central station, as mentioned earlier, and we also created a New Zealand-specific deployment. We provided access to TMR's industry connections and vendors, which resulted in the selection of NeoGLS as the provider of the physical infrastructure. And we also used TMR's development team, who were co-funded by the New Zealand project team, and we developed that basic C-Roads basic interface that Mark mentioned earlier. So essentially, TMR ingested ETSI denim messages sent over cellular comms from roadside equipment in New Zealand. We then reformatted that information into the IP-based protocol, and then published that to the Monotch telex interface. This was our first project collaboration with Monotch, and they were very supportive throughout the entire project. They worked with us to help build and test our C-Roads compliant BI interface. We also collaborated with NeoGLS to integrate their device into our ecosystem, and we did plenty of early testing. I remember some late evening sessions with Mike in his backyard in New Zealand, and was surprised with at how fast the messages came over cellular from New Zealand. It was sub-second speed. So why is it important to collaborate with government? So road authorities have a key role to play as a technology enabler. We take a bigger picture view, knowing that our involvement is well beyond the period of any individual project. We're focused on the end outcome, in this case is road safety. So while each project needs to deliver its own scope, we need to make sure that all work undertaken is working towards creating that safer road environment. We also want to create a multi-vendor environment and work towards regional harmonisation. We need to demonstrate to vehicle manufacturers and to industry that we are an attractive market and that their technology will operate successfully here. Road authorities also have a role to play in a future connected ecosystem with the provision of central information exchanges or NAPs to support the transfer of real-time road safety information. Road authorities also need to understand and prepare for the future. So we're happy to share this information also with our project partners and help guide their projects. For example, we understand the future delivery of road safety information will be multi-channel, so we need to prepare for that. And as we've seen from this project, all project partners play a vital role, and collaboration is key, and no one entity can do this alone. So what did we take away from this project? What benefits did we receive? So circling right back to my first point, our long-term program objectives include developing our own skills, supporting and developing industry, and also raising public awareness. And through this piece of work, we achieved all these objectives. Again, we also recognise the importance of having our own in-house SMEs and a technically capable development team. During this project, sometimes at short notice, we had to bring our team together and work through problems. Having our own people allowed us to meet project timelines, but also meet the expectations of our project partners. As a team within state government, we've been considering our future delivery and support model. So we don't want to compete with industry, but rather fill the gaps and then also undertake the responsibilities of the local road authority. We've been working on a collaboration delivery model where we work with partners who are willing to contribute to an outcome. This was our first formal collaboration managed through our newly created partnership agreement. For us, the work delivered measurable benefits and team learning. So for example, we shared costs. So the New Zealand project team funded some of the project-specific development we needed to do. As a team, we added a number of significant points to our program lessons log, and we've also shared that with New Zealand. Shared IP as well. So the new functionality that we developed through this project is now available to all states of Australia and New Zealand. So there really are benefits for everybody. And we're very grateful for the active participation by all the stakeholders in this project. There was this real shared desire to make this POC work. And finally, I'd like to thank our project partners on this one. We were very fortunate to be involved, and now I'm just wondering when we can do it all again. So thank you for that. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, hopefully we can do it all again very soon. Thanks for your part in this great collaboration, international collaboration. Finally, we have Nicolas Mercier joining us from Monotch, and Nicolas joins us from Europe. So an early morning start for Nicolas, and really appreciate him joining us today to share his part in the project.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your introduction. And of course, it's early, but it's always good to be able to present outside of Europe our experience as well. So, like Simon said, I'm Nicolas. I'm a senior deployment manager for Monotch, and you already had a good presentation of the other people here about the experience with this New Zealand topic, and also how important it is to have authorities participating. So what I will do in my presentation is a bit more of how we, for instance, as an industrial partner, can bring some global expertise to answer to local needs. And I will go over a little demonstration and discuss the different aspects of it. And of course, if you have any questions by the end, feel free to ask them. So how do we start? We are Monotch. We make traffic talk. So we realize societal benefits and cost effectiveness for cities and authorities by connecting their mobility to the digital infrastructure. Overall, this means that we have a solution that is impactful, that is proven, because you will see in the later slides that there are many projects that has happened over the world already. And in the end, it has to be safe for the user, for the infrastructure itself, as you want something that works over time. So in this map here, I want to show you a bit. Of course, this is where we as Monotch have been active by implementing CITS solutions, but it is also a proof that you can have worldwide approach for CITS solutions, and you don't need, obviously, to always have a very specific development, a very specific approach. So, and this is what is good with CITS. We built our solutions based on standards, and we'll talk about it a bit later, but we can go from production solutions that are already in place, for instance, in the Netherlands with talking traffic, to pilots to answer specific use case, specific challenges that road authorities are facing that countries would like to align for. And as you can see, we are already active in Europe and starting now to be active also on outside of Europe. And here we started with New Zealand for Oceania. So what we can discuss today is that based on our experience with the talking traffic and the Dutch example that we have, we are able to identify the current flow. So you will have on one side the domain authorities, which is the public parties, and then you have on the other side the domain market, so more to the private. And what we see is that in terms of funding, in terms of infrastructure preparation, and make sure that the ecosystem will be moving forward in such CITS projects, you will have the public authorities that will be responsible for the roadside infrastructure, as well as the funding for the public fleets required, also to connect to this public CITS hub. And here in that example for the New Zealand or for the Netherlands, it would be our product Telex. Then on the private aspect of it, you have the service provider that would connect and provide any of the services to the road user. In the end, that would be the people like us to enjoy all the services and the CITS solution. What is important is that on the road user, it can be anything. It doesn't need to be a very specific item. You have OBUs, you have navigation apps, it could be fleet management systems. On the roadside infrastructure, it is a bit global. So you don't have just the traffic light controllers. It can be barriers, can be any roadside unit types, radars, sensors, camera, anything that is connected and fixed on the road to help a city, a road authority. If it is intelligent enough, it can connect and benefit from a CITS approach. And in the end, you have the public fleets. So those represent the emergency vehicles, they represent the road operator vehicles, they represent the transportations as well. So the public CITS hub will be responsible for all the data exchange. It will be real-time data exchange. It aggregates data, makes it federated, has the quality control applied to it, make sure it's secure, and provide a very key item, which is governance. Governance is something that authorities will look forward to. It allows you to set up the policies. It allows you to define how you want your CITS solution to work. On the other hand, the service provider will be responsible to get the data from the infrastructure, make something out of it, a service that would then benefit in the end the road user. So for this, you can have maps, for instance, that are being appear. And like you can see here in the New Zealand case, you had the Waze application for that. What is interesting also to look at is that at some point you need to link everything together. And in the middle, you would have between the public and the private aspect of it, so domain authorities versus the domain market, there is an agreement that is passed on regarding the exchange of data. So we want to make sure that you comply to any GDPR requirements, but there is this agreement that allows the data to go through. Then what we see is that most of the time, and this is a good example, is that you don't need as a public authority to fund the technicalities regarding the public link, for instance. What we also see is that it can be managed by private services that would allow the public fleet, like road transportation or emergency vehicle, to also connect to your CITS solution. This is allowed because we have all those standards that we're already working with. For instance, between the roadside infrastructure and the public CITS hub, you will have the subject interface, which is a standard connectivity protocol. And then in between the CITS hub and the service provider, you can either use the service provider interfaces that are already CITS compliant, or you can use also the NetC1, C-Road 1, which is the C-Roads BI. Basic interface. In the end, what it brings is that you have a standardized, open, non-proprietary, which is really important because then there is no lock-in with a specific supplier, bidirectional because it goes both ways. You get information, you share information, and that is specifically designed for CITS approach. So what did we learn? And that's more of a global learning, I would say. First of all, CITS is something that exists already for a few years, and there are models existing already applied and in production. So you have technical standards that are available, and for instance, for this New Zealand project, we use the C-Roads one, like it was explained by Mark. Then there is already multiple use cases available. You have roadworks warnings, like we did in New Zealand, but you have also emergency vehicle approaching to highlight when there is an intervention happening. There is also the GLOSA use case, which is about adapting your speed to get to the green light. So many use cases exist, and it's always a good reference to understand how that would be impactful for road authority or for a region or a country. Of course, you have also proven CITS solutions. So here we have this talking traffic program that is in the Netherlands. That is a good conglomerate of private and public parties that work together in order to bring all the CITS use case that can be up live in production and benefit the road user. And finally, what is also a requirement, but also that is existing, is that you have proven solutions. You have ready and easy to use TLX platform, which is our product, which brings the real-time aspect to the requirement of CITS. The other positive aspect of having a platform like TLX available is that there are already connected CITS actors. And what you see is that in most of the case, one actor in Europe will mostly also be available in different countries around the globe. Of course, you also need to adapt to what is your local requirements. So there is always a regulation that will vary. There are some different level of privacy requirements, security, and this is what you need to adapt to. And finally, there is us, human beings, being on the road, using our car, using our features, and adapting to our own cultural aspect of our life, which is also a big impact in terms of establishing habits. If you have any more questions. If you want more information, I'm sharing here on the screen some links to either our Monotch video, but you can also access our website, go to some use cases, read about everything that we have deployed, and of course you can also contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And I'd like to take a very short moment to congratulate our speakers for staying on time, because we do have some time for questions. So if you have any burning questions, please do put them into the Q&A, and we'll try and address them in the time that we have left for the webinar this evening. We do have an initial question from Jamie Smith in Australia. I think I might be able to help a little bit with this question myself. Jamie asks, did the project team consider the involvement of the academic sector in this particular instance? As far as I'm aware, there was a limited funding window that was provided by NZTA, who gave the seed funding for this project, which probably precluded academia and students from being involved in the research. But perhaps the partners themselves can shed some more light on that. And maybe Simon and Nicolas, perhaps if you have anything to add in terms of if you've worked with academia or research institutes in the past, what value can they bring to projects like this?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Firstly, to answer the original question, so there certainly was some consideration, and I'll talk about some involvement we did have from a research perspective, but you're right, the fund was really designed for innovation actions where they were looking at the more practical implementation. That said, we did actually have some research involved looking at industry perspectives and understanding around the technology within the industries we're working with. So a limited amount, and as Simon said, the main function of this particular innovation fund was more the project action on site.
Yeah, and also maybe I can add is that, yes, we do look at academic sector because, for instance, there are programs like innovative programs that would implicate this kind of organization. And we have one ongoing, for instance, in the Netherlands, which is called DITM. And we're working with an instance called TNO, where there are a research sector representative, and they are very big in the Netherlands. And here, for instance, we have a focus on autonomous vehicle. So there are, of course, a lot of different use cases that can be approached with the academic sector. And yes, industrial partners are part of those research because it's also fruitful in terms of technology advance.
In Queensland, we've had a lot of success working with academic institutions as well. Our first program of work involved a lot of research and analysis that was conducted by an academic partner. And also in Australia, we're quite lucky. We have an organisation called iMove, so that does joint government and academic research into technology. So that's an avenue we've also used and continue to use into the future. So there's plenty of benefit, and I think there's plenty of potential there as well.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Good answers. I'll take my host's prerogative to ask a question of my own. Mike, you mentioned the user side input that you were seeking at the end of the project. Given that CITS is so fresh in New Zealand, it would be interesting to hear the perspectives you picked up on from the users.
Yeah, good question, Simon. So I guess one interesting perspective we had actually was I was involved out on site as well when we were implementing the hardware, and some of the actual workers there on the roadwork sites and the traffic management vehicles or involved in the civil construction works, there was some skepticism actually about this, and I think that comes from a not having an understanding about exactly what CITS is or what it does. And I think the concerns there are around potential tracking. Obviously, there are all sorts of devices in some of these vehicles today, and they felt that this could potentially be another sort of tracking type device. What we found, though, actually was when we worked with the site leadership, with the team leaders, and they have their toolbox talks and various other sessions and actually discussed why we're doing this, what the end benefits are, what we're looking to do, there was a really strong turnaround, and people were really engaged, actually really interested and excited to learn more and to see where this could lead in future. So overall, a really positive response, but like I said, some initial skepticism there. So I think the education piece around what this is and why we're doing it is hugely important.
Thanks, Mike. Nicolas, if I pose a similar question to you, with your experience in Europe and in the Netherlands in particular, where you have significant deployment, how is the education piece for the users and the feedback that you get, I guess, from the users and the other major stakeholder being the governments that are supporting CITS deployment?
Yeah, so of course there is a little learning to be done as industrials and as public parties, because there is a new technology and we need to understand how it impacts our infrastructure. But in terms of a user, what we have observed is that if you have a little amount of a group that is starting to use the CITS solutions, then it will have an effect of a snowball, and it will impact the rest of the road user. And then with just 25% of people connected would pretty much implicate an impact of 100%. So, which is a good thing. So you don't need to have everyone onboarded, just a small part, and then it starts. And I do see other questions. Sorry, yeah.
You do see other questions? Sorry if I'm not.
Yeah, there are other questions in the chat. If you
if you feel free to
oh yeah, sure. So I'll take the one from Karen. She's from Resolve Group, and she's asking the main reasons why. I mean, we make it look like it's simple, and why is it not then more utilized? So from our side, this is something that we try to communicate a lot, because we do see a lot of, like Simon explained from TMR earlier, there is a responsibility from the public authority to bring forward these kind of solutions to their country, to their regions. And most of the time, we get stuck a bit in pilot. And this is something that can be a bit of a hard break, because then you have some cost issues and all that. However, you need to prepare funding for it. But when you have the funding, it's of course solutions that are ready for deployment in production. So I would say that it's more about something that they need to understand, the initiative that needs to be taken, and the courage to just say, okay, solution exists. Let's now try to make it happen and see how it goes. But maybe Simon, yeah.
It's a great topic, that one, and there's a few points in there. So one of the things that one of the reasons why we got involved in this project is to work with New Zealand to demonstrate it's not just Australia, but there's regional harmonisation coming together. So we need to demonstrate to industry, but also vehicle manufacturers, that we are preparing our infrastructure, and the way we're planning on deploying this technology is harmonised in this whole region. And then only when we can sort of demonstrate we're at that point will industry truly become involved in sending technology our way. At a federal level, there's a lot of work happening in Australia to look at how we do this as an entire country. I only represent a single state in Australia, so we need a national agreement on this sort of technology before we can progress. But doing work like this in the first instance, I think, is fantastic, and it all builds that business case for regional harmonisation, I think.
Thank you, guys. So we have one more question there from Tom Axton, talking to your point there about harmonisation. Simon, you got a question from one of your other state colleagues, Tom from Main Roads Western Australia. Is it possible to find out more about implementing the C Roads architecture for the data exchange? Do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. Feel free to contact us. I'm personally not the best contact, but I can forward you on to our technical team. We are quite active. We have a person who just monitors international developments and standards. So there's a reasonable amount to it, but we can definitely help you out. and also in Western Australia, we're working with the Western Australian state government. They've got a great team over there, and they're using the infrastructure that we've built as well that we shared with New Zealand. So definitely happy to help, and definitely happy to share our infrastructure with you.
Thank you, Simon. Nicolas, do you have anything to add on Sea Roads, perhaps?
Well, I see there are 2 more questions, maybe more.
More
People are now
questions.
starting
to.
Okay.
Great, thank you. You're coming in thick and fast now. Yes.
I can.
Yes,
I'll
go ahead.
my 5 cents, maybe, and Mark as well, on the most impactful next thing that NZTA could offer in this space. I think, in short, we need to head towards strategy. There are some really good blueprints for that internationally. And then we need to be thinking about the national access point from a CITS perspective. Mark, what would you say?
I think very much the same. So there's that strategic piece which which government will lead in terms of what the benefits are and how we can help road users, and then really the whole technology hinges on the concept of a data exchange. So that's something that's generally run at a government level, as Nicolas has given some examples of for the Netherlands, for instance.
Thank you. And the next question from Andrew Craig Oricon in Brisbane. This one's perhaps for you, Simon. He's got an idea for the Brisbane City Council, and he's wondering if the work that you've done might be something that they can leverage.
Absolutely. So I think as part of our program, we have a collaboration section. So one of our objectives is to collaborate with essentially anyone who will listen. So if you've got some ideas, we're definitely happy to have a discussion with you about how we can collaborate. We've got a future program of work that will take us through to mid-2026. We've defined a lot of that. But if there's something you've got in mind, we are more than happy to work with you and understand it and possibly deploy it as well.
And
at the end of the day, it's all about road safety for us. If we can make our road environment safer for the traveling public, we've had a win. And this technology is one of the best options I think we have at the moment to just generally improve road safety.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one last question, which is perfect.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one point as well, is that also us as an industrial partner, we have this experience, right, with CITS approach. So it's always fine to contact us and get to understand what is it about. So there are no barriers here. There is always a contact available. So you can always, us Monotch, getting in touch with us, and we can look at what you are trying to achieve and bring also our experience, show off our use cases to help you understand better.
Absolutely. And perhaps that last question there, Nicolas, might be a perfect one for Monotch to answer. Ben asking, with new trials and proof of concepts, there's always a concern, I guess, when it goes to a live environment. What are maybe some of the key considerations there?
Yeah, so this is a bit reflecting on what I said at the beginning, is that you have most of the time we are locked in pilots, and the challenge is to go from this pilot to a safe deployment. So it's more about convincing and showing off that all that is existing works properly. For instance, if we put upfront our solution, we never had any security or safety issue with all our deployments. And in the end, either pilot or production deployments, what you had is always effective results. So you have statistics, you have analysis that are good reports to show off that, hey, this is working. So our approach in order to overcome this challenge and to do the step further and go into deployment instead of staying in pilot would be really for the public authority, because they are the ones that will set up the fundings for this kind of project, to really look at how it works. It works indeed, and now it can be done, because CITS is not just for one person in one place. It is meant for every connected device, every user, more and more of us are going to use intelligent car, intelligent objects that need to connect, and you need to have your mobility connected in the end to your digital infrastructure.
Thank you. And that's really the perfect question to finish on, because it really talks to the core focus of today's webinar, which is, meeting local needs with global expertise. The reality is now that CITS has been trialled significantly around the world. We've learned from both Simon and from Nicolas that they've been testing and trialling for many years now. So we have the data and the results that public authorities can lean on to give them confidence that these kind of solutions can be rolled out safely and effectively. So to wrap up the webinar, I'd like to say thanks to all of our speakers, to Mike Steere, CITS Project Manager, to Mark Walker from Resolve Group, Simon from CAVI, and Nicolas from Monotch. You've done a great job, guys. You've kept the audience till the end, which is always a wonderful sign that really engaging and informative webinar. As I said at the beginning, if you've registered for the webinar, you will receive a recording in the next day or two. But for now, thank you very much for attending, and we hope you learned a lot tonight. Thanks again, everybody.